Across the globe, we lose one man to suicide every minute, every day. So we're on a mission to inspire men to talk more, to listen, to support, and to be there for each other. A mandate means asking your mate out, checking in, letting him know you've got his back no matter what. If more men can be there for each other, maybe we can reduce the numbers reaching crisis point. We're exploring male conversations using the ALEC model that can help navigate a conversation with a friend who might not be doing so great. Ask, listen, encourage action, check in.
I deliver a course called Mental Health First Aid, which is a 2-day course really helping people to understand more about mental health, to recognise the signs and symptoms of somebody who might be starting to experience mental ill health, and to know how to support them when they are starting to feel down, to know perhaps where to signpost them if they need more support, but also to offer their own support to colleagues, friends, loved ones, anybody really that they come into contact with. I suppose there's a big difference, isn't there, between somebody saying, "Are you all right, mate?" in a crowded room, or when you're both rushing off to be in different places, and somebody saying, "How are you?" Really asking genuinely, and you can feel it. You can feel the difference between somebody who doesn't really want to know, they're just saying it sort of in passing, and somebody who really cares. And that's to do with, you know, the way that you might look at somebody, or just the fact that you've chosen to ask them in an environment where giving a real honest answer about perhaps the fact that you're struggling is going to be possible.
For me, it's about taking a genuine interest in people, and if you can ask the right questions, you can find an awful lot out about people. I think that's what I would encourage people to do, is like show a genuine interest and try not to be selfish. And that motivates me in life, and I just find it interesting because it's like having all these eyeballs on the world, and you can tune into them if you ask the right questions, and you can watch that incredible film through other people if you just tap in the right way.
Listening, it's a really interesting one, because I think we all know how to listen and how to hear, but actually really listening and making someone feel heard is a kind of a skill, I suppose. And it's something that some people are born with, some people are just naturally very good at listening, and other people have to learn those skills. And I think we all know when we're talking to somebody about something that, you know, that is meaningful to us. We all know what it's like when you don't feel like that person's listening. You know, when they're kind of listening, but they're also looking at their phone. Or they're obviously caught up in their own thoughts. That's the other thing as well, that people are often so busy thinking about what they're going to say next or how they're going to answer, they're not really listening to what you're saying. So it's a skill that you have to practice, and I think everyone should practice doing it just generally with family and friends, just in normal conversations. Really practice focusing on the person and hearing what they're saying. I suppose generally I would say do what the other person's doing. So if they're making eye contact with you, probably they're quite comfortable with it, so make a bit with them. But equally, if they're obviously struggling, don't then kind of gaze into their eyes, because it won't help. Not interrupting, for example, is a big one. Not advice giving is another big one as well. Very often when we're worried about someone, the first thing we do is jump in with advice, you know, I think you should do this or that. It's always really helpful to let someone sit in silence. Sometimes silence is really helpful, and the person can use that silence to gather their thoughts, re-gear themselves, get ready to say something more. Very often it can be a bit uncomfortable though, and so we want to jump in and fill up the silence.
As a producer, my job is to help you get whatever is in your head out here, and then marry it with what I think fits it best. So I have to marry your lyrics with the right music and the feeling. So my sessions always start off with a conversation. My formula is sitting down, how you doing? How you been? What's been going on? And that conversation usually takes up like 2 hours of the session. And that's my thing. It's creating the safe space for the artist to be able to open up, no judgment, and express themselves however they need to express themselves. I'm almost like a therapist in a way.
And I think encouraging action is also about other forms of support. So, you know, if somebody is struggling, if you're worried about somebody, and particularly if it's a mental health thing, then encouraging them to go to the GP is obviously one of those things. But there's lots of other actions that can be done, and you can involve yourself in those things with somebody, you know, going for a walk with them, you know, playing a game of football. go for a drive somewhere and start up a conversation in the car so that you can both kind of look out of the window and, it's a little bit easier to have a conversation. How about we, meet up and have a chat, go out for a drink and talk things over. And that's another thing that a friend can help with, somebody can make that call for you. Or it might be that you can support by ringing somebody's partner or their mum and letting them know what's going on, because again, that call can be quite hard to make. So there's lots of other ways that you can support people. And I suppose the main thing is just to ask them, what can I do? How can I help?
I'm a massive empath. And if you lack that as a trait, you don't understand other people. And that's why we can get into the scenario where, just get on with it. The whole idea of get on with it, man up, sort yourself out. So this is why it's so important to have open and honest conversations, because they are the conversations that will literally save lives.
Generally checking in with somebody, because opening up to somebody can be a really big thing for people, and so it absolutely needs to be followed through. The other thing that's important to mention is that sometimes somebody will share something with you and you might suggest perhaps that they go to the GP or that they talk to somebody specific or they do something, and it might not be the right time. They might not be ready for that. Opening up to you might have been quite a big thing in itself, and also might have been enough. But it might be that later on down the line, a week later, they might be more open to doing something that you suggested. So that's another reason to check in as well, because things change. But it's as simple as, a text, how have you been doing, or thinking of you, or what's been going on since we last saw each other. But I think the main thing is not to wait until you're worried about your friend to do that. It's actually to start talking about stuff now. Then whatever you get from your friend, telling them honestly how you are, because that means a lot. And if you've been open about what's going on for you, they're much more likely to feel comfortable being open about what's going on for them later on down the line.
How many times have you sort of felt like you're the only one with a sort of a certain problem or certain issue, and then as soon as you hear someone else sharing about it, it's like, oh, and just that shared experience, you're not alone. And I think when it comes to mental health and it's all about connection, but then just being humans, just being human beings, and just having that sort of taking the time to really check in on someone.
The thing that's the most helpful is the support from another person. It's about bonding, isn't it? It's about feeling that you're not alone. And that feeling absolutely can come from, like you say, a common bond, talking about music, talking about sport, talking about, I don't know, anything that comes up, things that you've seen and done. Sometimes we put far too much pressure on ourselves to kind of just talk about this big thing. I mean, it all goes both ways, I suppose, doesn't it? And so if you're doing these things for your friends and the people around you, they will do those things for you, because we all have ups and downs. Everybody has days where they really feel like they can't cope and life is tough and it throws stuff at us unexpectedly. And so you can bet that somebody that you might have initiated a conversation with a few weeks ago is then going to be there to support you later on down the line when it's you who's struggling. So that's the great thing about building up relationships and starting to do all these things and use things like the ALEC acronym, is that we're creating environments where people have like a kind of a safety net, so that when things go wrong, they have people that they can turn to and who will support them.
If you've been through it, you'll know that it's wonderful to know that you're not the only one going through this thing. And communication is the way to find that out. I'm alive today because I communicated. I've been trying to have this conversation for the last 12 years, normalize, to inspire men that actually it's not weak to talk about your feelings, it's strong. It's not weak to cry, it's strong. To show your vulnerability in such a direct and visceral way, that shows real strength.